So this is the part 2 of your lecture 0. And in this, before that, we were actually talking about the basic kind of like model, and we were talking about that what problems you might face when you make an econometric model. That problems could include simultaneous causation, the sampling errors, or sampling or the measurement errors, and some other kind of problems. And we were discussing that your theory actually explains you that what factors are going to explain your variable, what variables you should include and what variables you should not include, and what kind of relationship you expect. These expectations come from theory. And when you run a model, you do not necessarily get the sign which theory predicts. When you run a model, your model does not come up with the same sign which theory predicts. That is something that shows, like, say, for example, as far as this quantity demand function is concerned, the expected sign between the dependent and dependent variable is negative. That the expected sign between the quantity demand and price is negative. But if you if you know about the given goods, what kind of relationship exists between given goods? Give the demand of the given goods and the price of given goods. Yes, it's a positive. All right. Something similar happens with the Veblen goods, the goods which basically are the luxurious goods, like, say, for example, diamond, Ferrari, and there are a lot of very expensive like designer clothes. They basically also have got some kind of positive relationship. Their demand increases when their price increases. That might surprise you, or that might not surprise you. It depends. But like generally, for the Veblen goods also, as far as as same as for the given goods, which are extreme inferior goods, the relationship between the price and quantity demand is positive. The price increases, the quantity demand increases. All right. So that's what basically happens. Like, say, for example, if you look at in the flood affected areas, if you run this kind of a model, they are looking for staple food. They are looking for the basic food. And although their price is increasing, their demand is increasing because they don't have got money to buy anything else. They don't have got any, they don't have got any other demand. What the demand is, what their child want right now is the food, say, for example, to survive. So whatever money they have, whatever the money they actually have got, or they have saved for some other reasons or some other purposes, they don't spend those all things at this moment. They spend all of the money on the food. So now what basically is, what does it tell you? Does it mean that your theory, the law of demand, does not exist?
No.
Why not?
It exists, but somehow because of maybe in.
Okay, to begin with, you people should know that the data, first of all, the term data, the word data actually is a plural word, which means numerical information. The singular of the data is datum, one observation. Generally, no analysis can be performed. No analysis, no calculations can be based on single observation. For analysis, for evaluations, you always require a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of data points. All right. So that's why this is called data. So the data basically is numerical information about anything that is happening. So when you look at those data sets, the data sets come in the variety of forms. Like some of the data sets that you get are cross-sectional data sets. Some are the time series data sets, and some basically are repeated cross-sectional data, and some are panel data. There could be so many other examples or kinds and types of those data sets as well. But right now we are actually going with these 4 types. The first is a cross-sectional data. The second is a time series data. The third is a repeated cross-sectional data. And the fourth is a panel data. All right. So does anybody know about the cross-sectional data from you? What do we mean by the cross-sectional data? Okay, so I was telling you about this cross-sectional data sets and time series data sets. The cross-sectional data sets are those data sets that basically are available for many agents at certain point of time. Like, say, for example, if you find out the GDP of all countries or SAARC countries or OECD countries or G8 countries in 1990 or 2020 or something, that is called the cross-sectional data sets. But if you are trying to find out the GDP of a country, say for example Pakistan over the last 10 years, and you are looking at the behavior of Pakistan's GDP over the last 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, that is called the time series data sets. All right. So I was telling you that cross-sectional dimension give you only the dimension of the agents, and the time series data only give you the dimension of time. But generally for the research purposes, you need both. By both, we mean, like that you need the data about different countries at different points of time. And in case of the cross-sectional data, you take the data about different countries at one point of time. In case of time series data, you take the data about one country at different points of time. But for the research purposes, generally you require the data of different companies, different corporations, different agents, different countries, different continents at different points of time. So that basically can be a pooled data set. That is called pooled because it pool up two dimensions. The pooling up two dimensions means it that pool up the cross-sectional as well as time series dimension. So the pooled data has got two variants. One is called the repeated cross-section and the other is called the panel data. So the repeated cross-section and panel data both basically are the data sets that have got both dimensions. Both dimensions means the dimension of time and the dimension of entities. So you basically if you the two variants could be the repeated cross-sectional data sets and the panel data. The difference between the repeated cross-sectional and panel data is in the repeated cross-sectional, the group of countries that you study over different points of time keep changing. Like say, for example, in 2015, you take country A, B, C. But in 2016, you take country D, E, F. And in another year, you take another group of countries. The countries that you have already taken in the previous years could be added to the new group as well. But every time you change the group, so that will be called the repeated cross-sectional data sets. But the panel data is the data which basically is about the same group over different points of time. Like say, for example, the data about OECD countries over the last 10 years. So the OECD countries will remain the same, but only the time period will change. But if both are changing, the time period as well as the group of countries, then it will be called the repeated cross-section. I hope it's making sense to you people. So,
Yes, sir.
so if you look at this example here, so look at this is a cross-sectional data example. You have got personal ID, like, you are taking the data about person 1, person 2, person 3, but look at the year. Year is 2005. So you are taking the data of both 1, 2, and 3 for 2005. Their gender is changing, of course, like first and second person are male, and the third person is female. And similarly, their ages are 24, 53, 32, and their annual income is 17,600, 36,000, 14,000. So what is common here is the number of persons basically are different, but year is the same. This is called cross-sectional data. Now look at this data set. So here the person does not change. The person is only one person. His gender will remain the same. His age will remain the same. His income might change over the different years. So there is one person. Like say, for example, in contrast to that, previously, if you look at the person ID, there are three persons, basically the first, second, and third person. The year was same. The gender was different because they were the three different people. Their age was different because they were different people, and incomes was different because they were different people. But here you are talking about the same person who is male, but what is changing here? The year and the main variable, the annual income. So, and his annual income was 17,600 in 2005. In 2006, it was 1,800. In 2007, it is 19,100. Now look at that. This is a repeated cross-section. What you should observe, look at this. The data was taken about three people. But the ID of them was 1, 2, and 3. The year was 2005. When the second group was chosen for 2006, the same people were not chosen. They were not 1, 2, 3. Rather, they were actually have been replaced. The 1, 2, 3 have been replaced by 4, 5, and 6. Now, this is called repeated cross-section. There could be another, round of the data, or another, round in the 2007, where you might take, like, say, for example, 7, 8, and 9. So it's something, like that's what basically is the case here, right? So in case of the panel data, the panel data actually is very commonly used these days for all the researches. Generally, the studies prefer to have the panel data because the group of the people remain the same. The year changes only. So you basically are looking at the behavior of first, second, and third person over different years. All right. So